One. This is for merit badge, as I understand it, community service. So, gentlemen, take it away.
Color guard, prepare to present the colors. Color guard, present the colors. Troop salute. Audience, please rise. Please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Color guard, prepare to post the colors. Color guard, post the colors. Color guard, regroup. Color guard, dismiss.
Thank you for that. Very well done. I've asked the troop leader to come up and say a few words.
I'm not the troop leader, I'm Chris Mullins, but Dave Watkins is the troop leader back there. Dave Watkins, hello. I'm Chris Mullins, I'm the merit badge counselor for 3 merit badges: citizenship in the community, citizenship in the nation, and citizenship in the world, and they're all Eagle required merit badges, and pretty intensive. This is Troop 41. It's an exciting and growing group of phenomenal kids. You probably see them doing things in the community quite a bit. Tonight we're working on citizenship in the community, and we'll be doing 2 of them tonight. One of them is to go to a community meeting and to listen to whatever they're discussing, and then to write about a difference of opinion. So we're hoping for an aggressive, volatile, partisan, whatever the topic is. Let it get ugly, that's fine. And then they're supposed to write about what position they sided with and why they felt that way. After that, we may leave a little early if that's okay.
That's fine.
School night. We're going to do a walking tour of Solvang, where they're going to find all the civic buildings, from fire departments to Parks and Rec to post office and things like that. So that's our evening planned out for us tonight. But thank you very much for having us.
Well, thank you for being here. We really want to cooperate and help these guys with their citizenship. An Eagle is a very important thing that they all can attain. It's good to see them out working for it. I see a bunch of badges on this right here. Are you getting close to your Eagle? Yeah. Yeah. It's a great thing. Well, thank you all very much.
Thank you.
And we hope you enjoy the meeting tonight. The next thing is the city manager's report.
Just 2 things. One, to report on our attendance at our annual haunted house that Fred Lagerman spearheads. It was 2,000, a little bit less than prior years. We think the World Series might have had a slight effect on our attendance. Some of those parents wouldn't let their kids out, but it was very successful, and Fred does a great job with that every year. And then just with the recent fires and things that are going around, just to remind folks that they should have emergency kits ready at their house, and also to sign up for Aware and Prepare on the county's website so they can get notifications of emergencies. You can go on there, you can enter your mobile number, and you'll get text, or you can do it via email or your home phone. So go on to the awareandprepare.org website and you can sign up for those.
Thank you. I can recommend the Aware and Prepare. That's a good thing. I've been notified several times. Public communications, written or verbal. At this time, please direct comments to the City Council regarding consent calendar items or matters not on the agenda but within the jurisdiction of the Council. Speakers are limited to 5 minutes. I have only one speaker slip. Shirley Stacy.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the Council, staff, and City Manager. My name is Shirley Stacy, and I'm here to report on the meeting of the County Library Advisory Committee. And the meeting that I'm going to report on was one that happened on the 30th of October. At that time, Management Partners, who's been hired as the consultant to do a study of library administration in Santa Barbara County, presented their work plan. And we basically, it's to gather as much information as they can, both data and in written form and with many interviews. They're going to then compare Santa Barbara's existing approach with other California county systems. And finally, also evaluate the proposed formation of the City of Goleta Library. And finally, to prepare a report and present the results to the Board of Supervisors and county officials and others. And the Library Advisory Committee will again get a report from them. And they're hoping to be done by January. I think that's a bit ambitious, but that's, that's, I guess, what you pay for, right? They started with the interviews of the Library Advisory Committee members, and there were 5 main points of interest that the group wanted the study to include. Number 1, a way to ensure fiscal stability that extends into the future to enable long-range planning. Number 2, create political will for change so that the Board of Supervisors and the city councils accept the results of the study. Number 3, ensure equity among parties in the system, for example, in regard to distribution of per capita. Acknowledge some degree of autonomy for individual libraries and their cities. Number 4, increase the transparency of administrative fees to show the costs of the services they charge for. Number 5, work out a way to structure ballot issues going forward. And finally, number 6, I said 5, didn't I? That's number 6. Find ways to improve communication in Zone 1 or restructure the system for better communication. And so that's what I have to report tonight. If there's any questions, I'd be...
Does it look encouraging to you that they're going to come to a satisfactory solution?
I'm going to be
Optimistic.
optimistic, yes. Yeah, and I should add too that other interviews are starting. The next ones are on Wednesday here in the council chambers, and they're going to interview friends of the library from Solvang, Buellton, and Lubbock.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so we hope that they will do a lot of those kinds of things so they can gather as much information as possible to give us a good result.
Thank you, Shirley.
Okay, you're welcome.
I have no other speaker slips. Does anyone in the audience wish to comment right now? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the council for council comments and requests. Would you like to start, Mr. Zimmerman?
First of all, I want to welcome the Boy Scouts and thank you guys for being here tonight. And I'll do my best to give you some contrast and make a point on something. So that's all. Thanks.
Ms. Wade?
Good evening. I'd also like to welcome the Boy Scouts here. Congratulations on all your hard work. I have a couple comments. The first one I want to say is that I do extensive travel for business, and I had got an email from the library regarding a book list that they'd started up, and I thought, okay, my daughters had always had library cards, so I went on down to the library right before I flew out to New York and got a card and got the book Station 11. I'm kind of directing these comments at the Boy Scouts, and they set me up with all of their online services. I had no idea the vast resources of online information that they had. They have books, they have magazines, they have movies, and it was a free download. And I got to tell you, it saved me a ton of money. I don't ever have to walk into an airport bookstore again or Hudson's News. I read the books, I went online, read magazines. It was phenomenal. And I only wish I had done that sooner and taken advantage of that sooner. So all of you young gentlemen out there, I encourage you to go check that out here at our local library. So that was my first comment. The second comment is that you all probably know that I'm an avid bike rider. I'm not a pro, but I love to ride. And I did the Valley Loop, which was the least difficult of the rides for the FIG Grand Fondo, which was this weekend. So it was a 31-mile ride around the valley, and I did it primarily because I wanted to see what the road conditions were like and the bike path situations. Unfortunately, the ride didn't take me through the Solvang area. It was more San Ynez and Los Olivos. But it was still a very nice ride. It was nice to see a lot of people out there from all over. A lot of people come here to ride. And if we had maybe a better riding structure here in the city of Solvang, it would help out a lot, because then you'd bring those individuals that were in Los Olivos and San Ynez, probably bring them over to Solvang and spend some time looking around our shops and eating here. And also, I just wanted to announce that looking very forward to the Solvang Century, which is in March. So any of you riding enthusiasts, please get online and take a look at that.
Thank you. Mr. Toussaint.
No comments tonight.
Joni?
I really don't have any comments, but I'm happy that you are all here. And what's the age range? Is it the same age group?
Age range is 11 to 18.
That's what we have here, 11 to 18.
Actually, we got 11 to 14 here right now.
Okay, that is wonderful. That is wonderful, and I commend the gentlemen that take these young men under their wings and help them through the process. I remember that a long time ago when my son did it, and it's a good learning experience. And thank you for taking the time to come here and leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance. It's a very important thing. Thanks.
Now, I've already welcomed the Boy Scouts, so I don't have to say that again. But I have no other comments. Next item is a correspondence received from City Council. There's one. Does anybody wish to comment on it?
Like I mentioned before, I think you ought to not read it, but tell us what so that they know what the content is, because everybody doesn't have a packet. And so the person that sent it knows that we also received it.
Oh, this is from Trent Casberg regarding the traffic on Pine and other streets in town with regarding radar detecting signs and street signs cautioning speed.
In our last meeting, we did approve the purchase of 2.
We did. Actually, one got delivered Thursday, but it has blue and red lights on it, so it needs to be changed out to the amber, because you can't use the blue and red in the street. And also, Charlie Uhrig is at training right now for radar training, so he's there this week.
And do we have a location pinpointed where this first one's going to go?
One of our regular areas.
Which is?
Probably one was Skip Mesa. The other one's coming in, I want to say 2 weeks, and that's when both the amber lights will be put on. So we'll have 2 of them at the end of November. And then we'll probably put one up at Skip Mesa and probably one on Pine to start.
Okay. And then what about the one that the trailer, the old one that Ryan makes mention of, that's not very attractive anymore? Where is that one now?
I don't think we have that out right now. I think we brought it back in. I'd have to check with Charlie, but I don't think he relocated that.
Okay. Thank you.
Actually, it may be on Alisal. I'm trying to think about it. I think that was the last time we talked about was put on Alisal, but I haven't been out to see if
North
he did
or
that.
south? I mean.
South.
Thank you.
All right. Next is consent agenda. Does anybody want to pull any of the consent calendar items?
I have a couple. You go ahead.
I want to pull G and I.
Okay, I just have a comment about I, if I could just make my comment. And I don't know the technicality of doing this, but the word enforcement is kind of a harsh word, and I noticed in the outline of what other cities call such a person, some of them are called compliance officers, as opposed to being an enforcement officer. Is there a major difference between those two? I just think compliance is a softer word.
There's no technical legal difference between the terms. I have seen both used, both code enforcement, code compliance. Really, in this particular situation, I don't think it would be a significant change for the council to make it code compliance if the council wished to do so.
I just think it's a nicer word. I mean, the guy has his card and he says, I'm from code enforcement, and you think of
Sure.
enforcement as opposed to compliance, where a person is going to answer questions for you.
Then the maker of the, if we have a change in this, the maker of the motion can change the wording.
Okay.
Does anybody else wish to put any other items?
Nope.
Brian?
So I'll start with G.
Would you read G, please? G, George.
Item 6G, professional services agreement for the enhanced wastewater treatment study.
So my comment with that one was I liked all the partnering up with I forget which agency it was that was the county with getting a $20,000 from them towards the study, and then also evaluating some other options that we've been approached with. But my other comment here is there was a little bit of talk in some prior meetings about the smell down there on Fjord, and I'm just wondering if this consultant in their scope of work will be evaluating any options to help remedy that situation down there.
That's not in the scope. We could get a price from them to add that as we move forward. I've seen a couple of different things. I think I explained once before, when I worked for the city of Placerville, we actually used a vanilla mister to kind of offset the smell of the wastewater near the plant. So there are different options, but we could see what that would, we can award this contract and then get a price from him to evaluate some options on that.
And then just come back to us with
Yeah, we would
some
come back with
options.
that change order, yeah.
Okay.
In the morning, we could have coffee smell.
Yeah, it's tough because it is sewage that you're pushing under the river. So.
Yeah. And you had-
Item I?
and you had I too.
Item I, approved job description for code enforcement officer / public works inspector.
So with that one, I'm totally fine with the wording change. But also, the other thing I was interested in was we had the CalPERS unfunded liability presentation, in which case you'd see our unfunded liabilities going from, I believe, somewhere around 4 million to 15 million, depending on the economic performance and the discount rate that the actuators are calculating everything off of. So that's a pretty dramatic amount of money, especially considering that it's over almost twice the amount of money we have even in our general fund. So the other concern I have is we have these OPEB unfunded liabilities, which I believe is almost around 2 million, and that presentation didn't even cover where those unfunded liabilities could be projected out based on however those are calculated. So I guess I'd like to see the whole picture and the total fiscal impact on hiring an additional person before bringing more people on board that are going to already take this compounding, what I think is out of control situation.
Yeah, well, part of it, our new employees now fall under the new PEPRA. So our unfunded liability, they actually fully fund their 50% of the normal share as they're required by the new law. So your pension liability is much less with new employees, post 2011 when PEPRA went into effect. The OPEB, which is other post-employment benefits, is the retirement plan, and new employees only get the minimum amount if they retire under the medical. So we've significantly changed that about 6 years ago with the employee MOU. So the new employees that you're hiring now are a very, very small add to that unfunded liability. It's about $110 a month we pay for those newer employees in the retirement medical,
Okay.
where the current or the pre OPEB ones were getting 100% of their medical if they work 20
So
years.
could we get some kind of like quick presentation or something that shows us basically how all that's calculated, and so we know what the impact is off of?
Well, we gave you the PERS
Person.
presentation. You want to see the OPEB presentation?
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
we definitely can
And I
do
just
that.
want to see the impact, because you got, I don't know if this, this position is a, is there any revenue that this position creates to offset it, or?
Well, yeah, it's code enforcement, so it does. Our policy isn't to ticket. I mean, that's really not our goal. Our goal is compliance, is to get the people to comply, but we typically do see some revenue because people tend to not want to comply, and so we do have sign violations and other types of violations. There's other different things. So it's not a huge revenue stream, and really that's not the intent of it. It's to get compliance as opposed to punish
Right.
and get fees.
No, I
So,
understand that. I'm
yeah.
just trying to watch
Yeah.
the reoccurring expenses that we have to make sure our budget doesn't get too out of whack.
And
So-
this position, the necessity of it, how necessary is this position as far as what needs to be enforced in town currently and upcoming?
Well, from a code enforcement standpoint, we haven't had a code enforcement operator or person doing that for probably 6 months or more. And I think as you go around town, you'll see people know. They know that we're not really enforcing strongly. So I think the need is there to keep Solvang in its state. You know, we like to have that clean tourism look. So I think there is a pretty good need for that. And then from the public works side, I mean, as you're well aware, you guys were pushing a lot of capital projects through here, and we really could use the help to help with the public works side of that also. There's a lot of projects going, and Matt's staff is small and very hard working right now, but it'd be nice to have a little extra half-time help to do that public works inspection.
That was my next question. Is it going to be part-time or full, or do we know yet?
Well, what we've done, so the code enforcement officer was a part-time position, and in this year's budget, you guys approved to make that become a full-time, but where half of it is doing public works inspection. So the person would do 20 hours of code enforcement, 20 hours of public works inspection in a week.
Sandra? She has a comment.
I don't, I'm just here if you need me.
Oh, just in case, okay, okay.
She's got the flu. Listen, don't bring her up here.
I have a quick comment. I saw and took an interest in that also. So to answer some of your concerns, Ryan, there's a real detailed breakdown in the MOU that speaks about benefits for the employees, the dates they were hired, before and after. And to Neil's concern about if it's full-time or part-time, we did agree that it would be full-time, and I do strongly feel that it needs to be full-time. I agree with Joan Jameson that it should be compliance rather than enforcement, because you have to have someone that's very good with PR out there to make it a palatable experience to get them to comply. And yes, it would generate some revenue. Of course it would, because then you would have people actually paying for what they should be paying for applications and following protocols in that regards. So I'm all for it. Full-time. I think it's necessary. And they have to be quite knowledgeable. I went through the job description, and it was quite detailed, and someone with a lot of experience in various aspects of city government would have to take a position like this, I think. And being on the bar, believe me, we could have used an enforcement person or a compliance person.
You might explain what BAR means.
Board of Architectural Review for the individuals out in the audience. There's another part of the government here, and they take a look at the rules and regulations that surround how the city looks as a Danish town, and they try to keep it in line with traditional Danish buildings, colors, and sometimes individuals may come in and open up a business, and how it looks does not look Danish. So that's where the bar comes in, to try to keep things in compliance, to keep it looking like a nice tourist Danish town.
Any other comments? Well, since there's a question on the nomenclature of that new hire, let's have a separate motion for that to change the wording, and then we'll have another motion for the rest of the consent agenda. So can I have a motion regarding 4G? I'm sorry, it was 4I, to change the code enforcement officer to code compliance officer.
I so move.
Is there a second?
I will second that.
All those in favor, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstained? Passed 5-0. Now on to the rest of the consent agenda. Can I have a motion accepting the rest of the consent calendar?
I'll make the motion to accept the rest of the consent calendar.
I'll second it.
Been moved and seconded. Will you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Toussaint,
Yes.
Jameson,
Yes.
Waite,
Yes.
Zimmerman,
Yeah.
Mayor Richardson.
Yes. The consent calendar passes with a 5-0. On to the regular agenda, number 5.
Item 5, Hans Christian Andersen Park Restroom ADA Upgrade Options.
Staff report?
Good evening, City Council and Mayor. I also want to put in a quick thank you for the scouts before they leave, because I know they are leaving. That your group has done several Eagle Scout projects for the various parks, and another one just finished at Hans Christian Andersen. So hopefully when you guys get towards Eagle Scout project, you'll come back and do some more projects for us at the Parks and Rec Department.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, guys.
Good night.
Come back when you can stay. You can come back one at a time. It's fine.
There wasn't enough tension.
It's a school night, we've got,
Gotcha. Thanks for being here.
thank you for having us.
Fred?
Good evening again. My name is Fred Logman. I'm with the Solvang Parks and Recreation Department, the director over there. Back in early October, I brought to you a staff report on the progress and options for our Hans Christian Andersen Park restroom remodel to bring both restrooms, or potentially one restroom, into ADA compliance, Americans with Disabilities Act. And at that time, I was directed to come back with some numbers of the square footage cost per building, as well as to see what the per building price would be. So I did reach out to our 2 lowest bidders, and they both said in the affirmative that they would be able to break out the price structure and perform the necessary remodel on just the lower restroom, which is the southerly restroom nearest the tennis courts. And both bidders were J&P Construction and Elliott and Poles Construction. J&P Construction had said they would do it for the original estimated quote, which was $96,243 with a contingency of another $5,000. And Elliott and Poles Construction amended their bid, since it's now just a single restroom project, to $131,508. And of course, as you may remember, we currently have about $98,000 in our budget, so we would be slightly lower than necessary for either one of those 2 options. And as for the square footage of each building, the skate park restroom to the north is approximately 402 square feet, and the tennis court restroom is approximately 336 square feet. So the cost per square foot for the skate park restroom at the highest bid is $488, while at the lowest bid it's $291, nearly a $200 difference. And the cost per square foot for the tennis court restroom at the highest bid is $465, while the lowest is $284. Bids were also requested as I did some further research on the prefab and design build restrooms, and those are the ones that you may see on a large truck just going down the highway and a crane just drops it in place. An install can be anywhere from 3 days up to 6 weeks. And estimates traditionally ranged from about $125,000 to $175,000. And I had written in my staff report that a formal quote could be obtained with further direction, and I already did receive one at $157K. Other than demolition, the higher end of these quotes represents a turnkey project. So other than taking care of demolition, we hire this outside agency. They build the restroom, install the restroom, hand us the keys, and we're good to go anywhere between, as I said earlier, 3 days for a traditional prefab. That's where the entire restroom is built and just craned in place, or a design build, where it's built for us off-site in pieces and then delivered and assembled. And based on the mid-range estimate, the cost per square foot for such a restroom is approximately $450. And I did note that this includes a new utility room, which all of our restrooms around the city have pipe chase or utility rooms, but those price figures in your per square foot for the remodel design were not included with the utility room because we would not be making any changes. So it would just be to the restroom itself. Remodeling the existing restrooms still does not take into account the actual age of the restrooms, as I mentioned in the October meeting, which were built in the early 70s and 80s, so 50-year-old. But of course, replacing the existing restrooms with a prefab or design build concept may not necessarily have the same character as the restrooms do down there. One of the quotes that I did receive was they were part of the construction of the restroom 2 in Solvang Park. So of course you could increase costs if you wish to, or if you wish to incur those costs, you could go for a better, a more character-based Danish theme. And a discussion could also be had regarding reducing the scope of work, making certain that all ADA upgrades that are required by law are made during the traditional remodel, and that other non-ADA improvements could be removed, eliminated, performed at a later date, etc. So the alternatives are the same as last time. The City Council could choose to reject the current bids, approve a budget adjustment to use general fund reserves and award to the lowest bidder, reduce the scope of work, as we just mentioned, to decrease the overall costs, remodel only one restroom at this time, and that's the new figures that I provided for you. That would, of course, remodeling the other bathroom in a future budget year, or even go back and further get more quotes for the prefab or design build restroom concept. And after having done further research, all three options would require obviously more money than we currently have, anywhere ranging from just a few thousand if we were to take the lowest bidder and do the remodel, to potentially another $75,000 if we were to go start anew and just demo the current building that we have, start brand new with a prefab or design build concept. And if there are any questions, I'll be happy to take them.
I have a question.
I was going to ask the question. Does anybody have a question?
I have a question too.
Go ahead.
Okay, so what kind of traffic do we have using those restrooms? It was something I was thinking about, like how many people actually use those restrooms?
Well, seasonally based, obviously in the spring and the summer is much busier, based on not necessarily recreational use down there, but because the reservations for the picnic sites are so much greater, and you could have a picnic that draws in 25, and next Saturday it draws in 250. So I did do some research based on park use and the typical user per hour, and in essence, based on how many users we have, the restroom nearest the skate park could be reduced in size, because right now the men have 2 urinals and 2 stalls, and the ladies has 4 stalls. That could be brought down closer to the tennis court restroom size, which is 2 and 2.
And with the prefabs, I assume they have various styles and models.
Yes.
Is it possible to get something that looks more Danish, conforming to the
Seeing
town?
all the examples on the various websites, you can customize it out just about in any manner you wished.
But restroom 2 at Solvang Park, that's one. We had that custom made to meet Northern European, so you can do that. It's just you got to pay. The changes increase the cost.
Okay, so but prefab, you can have a style that might almost fit into that or come close.
Yes, I mean they traditionally come like a cinder block built. Almost imagine a state park restroom, but with incurring some additional costs, which aren't too great, they said, I mean, you're not jumping up the price by 50,000. You can have a Western theme, a Danish theme, ocean-going theme, just about whatever you want.
Ms. Jameson?
I'm concerned about the legal compliance that we have down there. Are we in any jeopardy because we don't have ADA bathrooms?
Well, we had a accident occur a few years back in which it was brought up that we need to ADA upgrade, and we've been working since then at that time. That was approximately 2.5, 3 years back. We do have, the tennis court restroom currently meets some of the ADA requirements, but if, it's my understanding, if as soon as you do an improvement, 10% must be put into ADA?
Well, no, if we touch those bathrooms, we need to bring them into full ADA
full
compliance, yeah.
But right now, we're okay. We're not in legal jeopardy.
Legal jeopardy, no. There's been no claim filed against the city. There's no indication that there's an issue with it. Obviously, we would try to comply to the maximum extent that we can, given the funding, but as long as we're on a trajectory or path to improving to ADA standards, the chances of being found liable or having to come into compliance as a result of a court order is fairly low. The courts are looking for compliance in that type of situation rather than sanctioning the public agencies.
Okay, I'm not just talking about access into the bathroom. I'm talking about ADA compliant toilet facilities and bars and all of that. Okay.
Yes, it's, in both the remodel situation and in the prefab situation, it calls for full ADA compliance.
Okay. Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Seeing none, thank you, Fred.
Welcome.
Now time for public comment. I have no speaker slips. Does anybody in the audience wish to comment on this particular item? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the council for action. Who would like to start?
I would like to start. My concern is that this has been something that's been hanging out there for 3 years, and I would like to resolve it, and I would like to get it done right. I would lean towards prefab with a theme that would come as close as possible that we could to Danish Village. I think that would be the quickest, most effective way to do it and get us in compliance very quickly.
That's a motion. I'll second it.
Is that a motion?
I'll make that a motion.
Is there any other discussion?
No discussion. Go ahead. Let's roll the vote out.
I'm sorry?
Let's just roll the vote out.
So the motion is you'd like to see 2 prefab structures and bring back the funding, the budget, excuse me, budget appropriation to make that a reality.
Keeping in mind that 170, 175 was it for the upper end?
That's on the higher end.
That's $350,000, which is better than 100,000 more than what we had got bids on.
That's nothing compared to the cost of the restrooms at the parking lot over here.
Right, that's true.
And if I may add, that 175 was for the skate park, excuse me, the tennis court restroom size, which is the 2 and 2 stall. So if you were to do 175 twice, then we would be asking to make the skate park restroom smaller.
And I think that's a good idea. Yep.
So is this motion to approve the funding for the prefab, or are we looking to get real actual numbers? Are these like real numbers? Because I'm seeing a gap between the demolition costs and then also the hookup. I know we say it's just drop it down, or
Yeah, I think we would want to, I think what you're going to do is give us direction to bring that back, because I think we want to make sure we've got all of our, yeah, because with the prefab, I'm not sure how the building permit process works, honestly, on how we would do that through our building department. So we have to evaluate that also. So but we can bring that back as what we would think be turnkey cost for 2 restrooms.
Would it be a better idea to table this particular item now, and then you come back with more solid figures for us to consider?
Well, at this point, we'd like you to reject the bids, because we need to close that door. We're not going to do the bids that we had out. We need to end that and then move to the next step, which would be come back with prefab. So we would like
Okay.
the action to reject the bids.
Okay, well,
Before we do that, I just have a question. Usually when you do a prefab building, it is not built on a slab, it's built up. So you're going to have cost of ramps, whereas opposed if you built it on ground level, you wouldn't have cost of ramps. Is that included in this bid?
It is in both the prefab, which is the restrooms entirely complete, or the design build in which they just bring the walls and put them up. They both have requests for where utilities are to be cut off and then they reattach. And they both have requests. In fact, the two different ones I got were for 6 or 8 inches lower than ground level, so the new slab they would install.
Okay.
So we'll get back options for both prefab and design build.
I can do that.
Okay.
So we're talking bigger money than the original bid process here, which is $213,000 for 2 complete restrooms done, built on site, instead of spending another $100,000 for 2 more that are built off site and brought in and installed. We're talking $213,000 as J&P's bid. And here you're discussing prefabs, which could bring it up to as much as $350,000. And we don't have enough money to do the $213,000 because we were talking about we had $98,000 to play with.
So the JP bid is a remodel?
Correct.
Oh, okay.
So I think for a sense of economics, that we ought to consider a J&P construction bid.
I considered that, but I don't think that we're obligated to take the lowest bid. I think that we're obligated to do the best thing. And if I'm understanding you correctly, we can make the restroom by the skate park smaller, so that might not be quite as expensive. The $350 may be reduced. It still comes in lower than the highest bid we have here of $357. So I'll do whatever this board agrees to do, but I would actually like to see more information. And if we're going to bring it back, then I'd like to see more designs and more information on the prefabs. And my reasoning for that is because I feel that this is something that should be done pretty quickly because it's been out there for so long and there hasn't been enough attention paid to it.
Well, as far as being quickly done, I assume that the contractor could come right in and build these things or remodel these things post haste. It would take time to construct the prefabs at a different location.
Not that long. They're pretty fast.
True, but my main concern is actually the overall costs. We're talking other items on our that are dragging down our budgets, and this one, by adding another $100,000, is not conducive to watching our revenue stream.
So with that, I'll make the motion. I'll make a substitute motion to do the total bid of 213 with J&P Construction.
Okay, I'll second that motion.
I just have a question. Is this just a remodel?
That's correct.
Just a remodel?
It's an interior remodel with you're doing the full ADA compliance and then aesthetic improvements such as paint, putting new tile on the wall, etc.
Okay, I'm inclined to go for the prefab then.
Well, is there any other comments? We have a substitute motion on the floor. We have a roll call on the substitute motion.
Councilmember Zimmerman,
Yes.
Mayor Richardson,
Yes?
Councilmember Jameson,
No.
Councilmember Toussaint,
No.
Councilmember Waite.
No.
All right, well, the next motion will have a roll call vote on the original motion. And
To add reject the bids and then bring back a plan for 2
that would be
prefabs.
Would you accept that motion change?
Now, if we
To bring,
We didn't have a second.
To
yeah, I would accept the I would make a motion to reject the bids and bring back information, more information on the prefab alternative.
Making the one restroom smaller.
It'd be prefab and design build alternatives, right?
And was their design included in this, what we just turned down?
The design of what?
The interior, any changes in the interior?
If we did a prefab?
No, if we did the other, the one that we just.
No, there was no interior design change.
Okay.
Would you accept the change to the motion? You seconded it.
Right, so we're gonna reject these bids and come back with prefab and design build
Okay.
options.
The motion's been made and seconded. Would you recall the roll, please?
Councilmember Waite,
Yes.
Toussaint,
Yes.
Jameson,
Yes.
Zimmerman,
No.
Mayor Richardson.
No. That motion passes 3-2.
And for clarification, that's for both restrooms.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Any other comments on this item? None? Okay, item number 6.
Item 6, options for First Street median south of Copenhagen Drive.
Staff report?
Mr. Mayor and members of the council, on September 22nd of this year, the city had a contract to remove the large oak tree from the median on First Street south of Copenhagen Drive. The tree had been deemed a hazard by actually 2 certified arborists after a large limb fell in the traffic lane earlier in the year. The Public Works Department at that time was planning on removing grounding the stump and planting a new oak tree at this location. Mayor Richardson requested that an agenda item be brought forward for the City Council to consider potential options for what might be placed in the median. One option was to go back to our public art policy that we brought in and put into play when the David Bermant Foundation came to us and wanted to put a piece of public art in our Sunnyfield Park. So we adopted that policy back in probably 3-4 years ago, I think it was. So you do have a policy set for that. Now that was set up when someone came to us and wanted to put public art in, and I think the David Bermant Society may have something that they would be willing to do in this particular option. So that I just included that in the staff report since you did do that a few years back. So I've kind of thought, well, what else could we do? So I've given you 6 options in the staff report. I'll go through those real quickly. One would be just to plant a new oak tree. With this option, a new 36-inch box, which would be 6 to 8 feet tall, would be planted in the island, and that would be about $700 for us to do that. 2 would be to plant an oak tree at the north end and then a faster growing additional tree at the south end. This would be a fast growing tree that would get a little higher and provide some color while the oak took its years to grow, which we anticipate would be 10 to 15 years. And then we could remove that small tree. That way it wouldn't look as barren in that island. So the cost for that, if we used an olive catalpa tree or a Chinese flame, would be about $900. Third was to install a public art piece. There's several options with that. Staff could be directed to reach out to art organizations to see if there's a desire to provide a piece of public art and provide it in accordance with that policy I mentioned. And the City Council could also use a process to choose and fund a piece of public art. Staff would potentially work with the Santa Barbara County Office of Arts and Culture on pursuit of a public art piece for that median. Third would be to install a monument. There was some discussion during the tree removal that a monument may be focused on the tree that was cut down or some other local historical focus. Staff would potentially work with the Elverhoy Museum of History and Art on that type of an item. 5 would be to utilize the medium for the city's community Christmas tree. Many years ago, the tree used to be put in a sleeve at the intersection of First and Copenhagen, and so you could do something similar with a sleeve in this median and use that as the annual Christmas tree lit tree. We would need to bring power to the island. We didn't cost that out. It was just an option that we just threw out there. And then 6 would be to pave over that island, which would result in about 4 additional on-street parking stalls, and that would have a cost of about $6,000 to reconstruct that median back to the road. So those are our alternatives. We're looking for direction from council as to where you may want to head with the island on First Street.
Any question of staff report? Seeing none, no questions. All right, we'll go to the public for comment. Is there any public comment regarding this item? I have no speaker slips. Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the council for discussion and action. Who would like to start?
I will. I think that what we have here is an opportunity to present a significant piece of artwork or something cultural, maybe something historic, something that resembles perhaps pieces from famous artists over in Europe. I think that the Board of Architectural Review would be very interested in being involved in a project like this, but I certainly would go for some sort of public art or monument there.
Any other comments?
Well, I missed the tree. And the main reason I missed the tree is because there's no shade there when you're waiting for the parade to start. I would like to see an oak tree back in that place, but I don't want to see another tree planted in front of it. I think we can put some bushes or something around it, but it's not good for an oak tree to fight the roots of another tree. So I wouldn't want to see that happen. So Karen and I disagree. I'd rather see a tree. And I think we can get one that's more than 6 to 8 feet tall. We can get one that's quite sizable for that amount of money.
Comments?
If that's a motion, I'll second it.
Okay, that's a motion.
We're not through discussing. Any other
That's fine.
comments?
So do we have like the proper water and stuff in place there for the tree? Because I know we're seeing a lot of trees die due to the
Yeah,
lack
typically with our, some of our street trees have irrigation in place. This one wouldn't. Obviously, that's been there for hundreds of years and doesn't have a water source. So we have a little water tender that we carry around, and our maintenance guys will water when we do plant new trees that don't have irrigation. So we just hand water them through their development.
And oak trees don't take that much water.
I'd like to see a combination of both suggestions. One is that an oak tree is going to take several, maybe more than a decade to become anything sufficient or to see. But then an art piece on that same property might be a good idea. My thoughts were that we plant an oak tree toward the rear of the island and put a loner art, maybe a 10-year loner art, in front of it until the tree grows up, and then we can remove the art. Or we could make a permanent art in front of it, just rather than have 2 trees planted there.
I like that idea. Can we squeeze a parking space out of it too? Maybe, I don't know. No, but I like that idea. That's good. The tree and the art, and maybe a parking space.
What's the cost on the art? Would we have to set some kind of budget, or?
I'll have to bring that back.
Yeah, you'd have to give direction on whether you want us to pursue a piece of art that exists, like we did with at Sunnyfields Park, or if you want us to, you know, if the council would like to design something or have a group design something or go through the BR or something like that.
Some sort of a contest.
You could have a contest, yeah.
That art would come in.
It would be even better if somebody donated a piece of art.
Yes,
And I
that's
have
true.
an idea of somebody that might do that.
Is it art we'll all like?
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
definitely. Definitely.
Well, then I'd like to make that motion that we combine
I'll second
artwork and a tree to replace the oak tree that's down, and the artwork could be permanent or temporary for several years until the oak tree was in full.
Yeah,
Full
and
maturity.
with that action, we could actually move forward. If you'd like the oak tree planted to the southern part of the island, we could get that and get it in
Right,
place, and
yeah.
then we could follow up with the art piece.
And I see that if the oak tree outgrew that southern part of the island island could be enlarged and moved back to sufficient growth for the tree.
Yeah, the island has the ability, we have the ability to change the size of the island,
Thank
yes.
Be all the way down to Oak Street.
Was there a second to
I'll
that?
second the motion.
It was moved and seconded. Motion's been made that we'll have an oak tree and art on the island.
So, art or a monument, not a monument, you're
No, not
talking
a
more
monument.
of
Art.
some art
Right,
piece, okay.
rather than a monument. We have a monument in the park already. Will you call the roll, please?
Who was the second?
Ryan?
Ryan.
Mayor Richardson?
Yes?
Councilmember Toussaint,
Yes.
Jameson,
Yes.
Waite,
Yes.
Zimmerman.
Yes.
That motion passed with a 5-0. Thank you. On to item 7.
I'll put our art major on that. Oh, he just left.
Hey, before Fred leaves, Fred, I heard nothing but great things about Skull, what was it called, Skull Island?
Skull Mountain.
Skull Mountain, yeah. People really enjoyed it.
That train was exciting.
That was Kevin McConnell who built that for us.
Is that right? Well, that's great.
Our regular volunteers.
Items.
You know, can I stop a second? I overlooked in the consent calendar. You know, I'd like to back up to that a moment. The
Thank yous.
the thank yous. You know, I went right on by me. Let me get to.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
Both for the art boxes and for
The art, and that the accept the haunted house donations, that's 4E. You know, every year, Terry and John Harmon contribute money to the haunted house, and it's really appreciated that they do that. That's it's a significant thing. And they had other donations were the Santa Ynez Valley Youth Recreation. They're a wonderful organization that raise funds with the it's the rodeo queen.
used to be. Now it's just our queen.
And so we want to make sure. Oh, then we some in-kind donations from Ryan Metzger, Kevin McDonald, Kim Short, Reed Wolfington, Waste Management, and Nielsen's Building Materials.
Plus all the man hours.
And you know, we have to highlight Ken Anderson and his contribution to many things that go on in the valley, including the haunted house. And then there was the $1,000 from the Santa Ynez Valley Youth Recreation and $300 from John and Terry Harmon. And then item 4F, the contributions for the utility box art program. Generous monetary donations from the Wilding Museum for $750, Solvang Conference and Visitors Bureau $300, the Solvang Shoe Store $450, John and Tara Wood $100, the Mercantile and New Frontiers $800, Hotel Cork $400, Richardson, Toussaint, and Zimmerman $500 each. So I want to thank all of those for their contributions. It leaves us still some short. So if there's anybody that wishes to, we're about $522 short. If anybody wishes to make a contribution that much, it would be gladly accepted. Any comments?
I think those people should be written thank you letters.
I'm sorry?
Written thank you letters for their contributions. The people that contributed.
Yes.
Should receive thank you notes.
Well,
of some
thank you
sort.
letters. I'm sorry, I didn't
Yeah.
understand.
I don't know who writes those.
I think the city clerk's running that program. She'll do the thank
Certainly
you.
write those letters.
Please. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Did we catch all those? I guess we did. Thank you, Fred. Thank you very much for what you do. Okay, on to item 7,
Item 7, City Council Protocols.
staff report.
I don't have that lengthy of a staff report. We were asked to bring back a timeline on the protocol related to replacing council vacancies. We did do a little bit further research, and when we do the all-mail ballot, which we probably would do with a special election, there's more options for that. So you have, per the state election code, you have the first Tuesday of May of each year, first Tuesday of March, and even-numbered year is the last Tuesday in August of each year, and then you have your normal June and November elections that would be qualified events for regular elections. So I put those in a timeline. Hypothetically, this would be a person who got elected in 2018, November. Election will be certified in December. And then what I did is I think you talked about a 90-day window of where the next closest candidate will be appointed. That's shown on your timeline. And then after that, you would call for a special election. And the first election that would be available would be the one in August of that year. And then at the end of the window, I also put then that year, I think there was an agreement that if with 1 year remaining, you would do the application process for replacement. So hopefully this helps you see that there's the little triggers that you would have over that three or 4 year time period for someone when they left. And you may want to then, put this into your protocols as a potential option. There's as I said, I just used, I think it was the 90-day was what I heard last meeting. You could move that closer to when the first available special election call date would be, which is in May. That's an option, but and then also the entire protocol packet is in your packet for review, because I think there was some discussion of potentially other changes. So staff is just here for direction as to any changes you may want to make to your protocols.
Questions of staff?
I think the only question I had was with the kind of like the timeline that's here. Would we specify any like minimum for? So you have this timeline where, for example, after 90 days, it would automatically go to special election. But what if you only have one person that's even expressed interest? So are there any like minimums that we need to specify for?
Well, I'll go back to
how would that work?
The protocol is just a protocol. So you could set that as the protocol, and if you only had one applicant, the council could choose to use that applicant.
Because it's just a guideline.
Select that, yeah.
Okay.
So when does the cost come into effect for an election?
Any of those special elections, we would have to hold with our election consultant, and that was the $28,000.
Okay, no, my question is though, say you open it up for candidates and only one person applies. Are we obligated to $28,000?
It may be a little bit less. I believe when Lisa checked, that was for a 4-candidate election, but you're still going to have the process of validating signatures and doing all of that. So that whether the number of candidates isn't going to be as
I think what you're asking though is, do we still incur the $30,000 cost if we open it up and only one person?
If you hold an election, it's going to cost you.
No. If we only have one person that is signed up for it,
well, if you appoint and you don't go to a special election, then there is no cost.
No, but if we let's say this happened right now,
okay,
and there's an empty seat here, then the city is going to notice that we, like, for what, a 2-week period of time or something, that we have an open council member seat, and if only one person expresses interest in that period of time, are we still signed up for the special election cost, or can we come back to council and say, hey, you know what, only one person expressed interest, maybe we should just appoint them?
Yeah, the protocol doesn't mandate that you have to hold a special election. You would have to make the call for a special election.
Okay.
That's what
So we wouldn't be signed up for
no,
the $30,000
you're not locked into the special election.
If you call for a special election, you have to partition, just like we do for a regular election, get 25 signatures. So in that event, then the elections board is in effect, so I assume we'd have to pay for that. So that's why he said
yeah,
one or more.
I think
one
this
or
is
more.
prior to actually stating we're going to have an election. So I think it's more of a call for interest, right, is what he's saying. The council, if there's a vacancy today, would say, hey, we're looking to see who would be interested in filling that seat. And if you got more than one person that was interested, then you would, whenever the next available call for election would be, you'd have that set up.
Then you'd petition for it.
Yeah, okay. But, okay. So that's the question. So far, any other questions? Seeing none, we'll take it to the public for comment. I have no speaker slips. Does anybody wish to make a comment on this particular agenda item? We must be really boring, you guys. Nothing going on. Okay, we'll bring it back to the council for comment.
In looking at the application that we've used in the past for candidates, for people of interest, you know, if we do an application process, I think we need to review that application. I think it's a little lacking in telling us anything about what kind of experiences some of the people have. I don't want to read a dossier that's yay thick. I want it to be very succinct, because it says you can add whatever you want to add.
The applications for commissions,
No application for,
are they too detailed or not detailed enough? Because there's a blank backside.
I know, but that says you can add other things.
Right.
It doesn't say how many pages. That's my concern.
Let's see.
I would like to give them an idea of what we are really looking for, and that's experience in the public sector, so that you understand the Brown Act, you understand.
Do we need to make a motion for that, or can that be handled ministerially?
Can we just make it a special election and like eliminate all of that kind of this hoop, that hoop, this thing, that thing, and just straight up special election, and then deal with the hoops if we have to and if they come? But at least put it out there to where people can get nominated and run. And that's like just standard boom, boom, boom. That goes into effect. And not have to do the appointment on either end, front or back.
And that's where I agree with Neil, because either we decide to do special election or we decide to hold application process. If we have a scenario such as what Ryan said, where we decide to have a special election and only one person wants to run, we can't just all of a sudden change that to an application process. I think we're pretty much nailed down to the election.
The government code says you have 90 days to either appoint or call. No, it's 90. Yeah, 90 or call for a special election. So
we
you
could
have
go-
that window.
So you could
still
go
have
out
that
there and
same
get
90-day window.
indications of interest. So we're allowed to do that. I mean, for our attorney, we're allowed to actually get indications of interest and then decide if we want to have an election.
You just have to make that determination within that period of time. It doesn't compel you to pick a special election in exclusivity. You have the option to do it one way or the other. So if you had expressions of interest, you could take it at that time. If you decided that you weren't interested in doing the appointment, you would just have to make sure that you called the special election to fill the vacancy.
Okay, so then I just think that we'd have to be very specific that that would be the route that we would take. If there was only one person, we would have to make a decision as to whether or not to go forward with the special election.
But then you also have write-in ballots when you have an election. And then what if we don't want to have a special election if it's only a year left in the term?
No, I think that in here, it was decided that we would do an application process if there was only a year left in the term.
So that's why I think the application, we still need to have an application, even if the person is, well, I don't know how we do that.
You're splitting hairs on time. I mean, if it's a year left, there's still a gap of time for application process, and there's a gap of time for election process. So the reality of it is what are we looking at? 30 days difference, maybe, roughly? I don't know. It seems like special election would,
You know, as much as it
eliminate
hurt
all this
what we
stuff.
just went through,
yeah.
it's probably the most effective thing we can do. You know, because, I mean, it may take time, but we still come to a solution, and that's the second time we've done that exact circumstance. We disagree because we have different viewpoints, but we still can come to a solution without incurring a lot of expense. You know, and so my feeling is that we change nothing and leave it like it is, and then go through this battle if that happens again. You know, it's sufficient. It's over with. And we may have 2 or 3 meetings to resolve it, but it gets resolved in the end.
So then just do away with the guideline and just follow the
protocol we have.
the
With the state says we can appoint or have a special election.
mhm.
And how we appoint, we could say we flip a coin. That's an appointment method, a gambling method, or
I see what-
applicate,
that
or
sounds
anything.
good.
Any methods, we could draw straws, or pick a number out of the hat.
Yep.
But if we're going to do that, then I'd like to see the guideline just removed, because we're just going to follow the state policy. That's exactly what you're
Well,
explaining right now.
There are various methods of appointments. We can have applications by appointment, or we can decide from the council how we would appoint.
Right. So what you're saying is that we wouldn't have a guideline in our council protocols about it. We would just follow the state policy, the state code.
Yeah, that's in effect what the protocol did, you know.
Well, I would like to look professional to the community, and I don't want to look wishy-washy on a very important issue like this. So I believe that we should come up with exactly what we're going to do. We can't just look at indications of interest and then decide, well, perhaps we don't like any of the people that are interested, so we're going to do a special election. So we either take the next runner-up, we have the special election. I think it has to be set in stone.
I agree.
The only way it's set in stone is it becomes an ordinance. So we found that protocols and direction and suggestion can be changed by the next council.
So then if a seat becomes available, before we even looked at any indications of interest, we would have to decide right then, pretty much the next meeting, that after the seat became available, which way we would go, because we just can't flip-flop back and forth on this.
That's true.
And it's an elected position, and if the closest we can get to an elected position being elected, I think is the high road, is how I see it.
Could you repeat that one more time?
Yeah.
So these are all elected positions we're talking about here. You have to get elected, nominated, elected. This isn't an appointment seat. So as close as we can stick to whoever takes a seat on this dais is elected regardless of whatever.
Well, in the case of Karen's position, she was almost elected.
But she would, yeah, exactly.
And that would, in my mind, qualify her as an elected, you know. So, you know.
I see, but it's not valid. It's not a valid point that because she was almost elected, she's elected. She probably would have been elected if we went to special election, but we didn't, so.
I would just like to see a consistent policy, and if we have to make it an ordinance, then we should do that.
And people that are serious about it are the ones that have come forward. I mean, appointment process, you could have 50 names thrown in there to get appointed. When it comes down to getting elected, that's another story. You have to put the work in, and you have to earn the seat.
And then like the condition was, if the vacancy occurred within a couple of months of the next general election, then that seat would be vacant until the general election, because we wouldn't want to have a special election that close to a general election. So there's all these variables, you know, and it's tough to nail it down without really getting a thick book with wherefores and therefores and where arts and those kinds of things. The protocol that we used or had took care of the situation, and then we resolved it as a panel. We resolved the issue without. I mean, it was a little strained and a little difficult, but we managed. And I venture to say that this happens not only in Solvang, but in other cities around the state.
That could have been drawn out if we really wanted it to be. That could have been drawn out longer than what a special election would have taken. We could have pushed that to the limit of then forcing a special election.
Right.
Now you're in the special election process timeline. So we came to a conclusion, which we were fortunate on, but the extent of that, the extreme of that scenario is actually longer and less time with a member on the board that's missing.
The special election is going to cost money no matter what. You know, no matter time we call it, it's going to cost money. When we should be given the opportunity to save the city a couple of dollars by at least interviewing or develop an appointment process that allows that allows representation by the constituency of the city and doesn't cost the city $30,000 or $1,000 or more, plus a long drawn-out period of only 4 members on the council. And we'd have a lot of tied votes during that time. So we're not effectively doing the city's business by having a vacancy that's there because of the length of a time of an election, wait for an election. We want to get the council filled up and get down with the city business. And if it requires an appointment, we should do that. If we can't agree on the appointment, then we can go to an election. But in the meantime, if we can agree on the appointment, then we've saved the city some money and we get down doing city business. So my thought is that we should either go with the protocol that we had, or just eliminate it entirely and then play it by ear when the next occurrence occurs.
I kind of feel, I see this vacancy timeline. I think it makes sense. I'm okay with following something like this and kind of adjusting it, but I do think that if we're going to make some kind of protocol for this council to follow in the future, it's going to have to either be an ordinance, or we just have to make an ordinance that we follow state policy to the T. Otherwise, it's just right back to arguing the protocol again. And that whole event was totally lost. It wasn't about the discussing the protocol like we're doing today. That whole merit was lost on the whole hoorah of what went on. So I just think what you're kind of describing is following state policy to the T. That's exactly what you're.
Excuse me, I
didn't
mean to interrupt.
It's okay.
Sorry.
I'm just saying, if that's okay, then I think it just needs to be an ordinance that we just follow state policy. If we're going to follow some kind of timeline like this that we delineate, then we need to make it an ordinance. But anything less than that, it's just right back to arguing whether we follow a guideline or not. It doesn't fix the problem.
Well, the state law, we did follow the state law by having the protocol. The state law says we either appoint or have a general election. It doesn't define exactly how we're going to go the appointment process. And
yeah, but then you get in this situation of arguing to follow the protocol when it works in your favor for who you might want or what, and then arguing against the protocol if you feel that it should be different. It puts us right back in this gridlock state. It's the only way to eliminate that is, you draw it out in a little hierarchy. Like, the second you're arguing this protocol thing, that's what creates the collision. We need to pick a way. Either we follow some kind of timeline like this and make it an ordinance, or you just make an ordinance that we follow state policy to the T.
Well, we will be following state policy, because the appointment, the state law says appointment process. It doesn't describe how we appoint. It just says we have to appoint, or we have an election.
Right. So
we should make that an ordinance then, so that there's no wishy-washy.
That's what I'm saying. Just then make that the ordinance. That's what we do. But there shouldn't be these.
Explain it, Dave, please.
Well, I was going to say, if you don't have an ordinance, then the default is state law. Then you have to do it that way. What is creating the difference here is you've got a council protocol that says if there's a vacancy that occurs, then it's going to be offered to the runner-up. If there's less than 1% or 1.5%, then you select through an application process. That differs from state law. So if you remove that and you don't have anything, the default is going to be state law. So you either appoint or you have a special election. At the time the vacancy comes up, then you make a determination. One, are we going to appoint, or are we going to have a special election? And if we're going to appoint, how we go about doing it. Then you have the discussion of whether or not you solicit applications, whether you have interviews, whether you flip a coin, whether you give it to the person who was the last vote getter, what have you. You can have that discussion at that time. You don't need to have an ordinance in place to do the default.
So what I'm just saying is that then we shouldn't have this policy in our council protocols. We just follow
if the council wants to follow state law, then you remove that provision from the protocols under 3.6 and you just default to the state law in that situation.
I just see the whole thing as this incredible distraction if there's this protocol that's in place, but then you say, oh, but it's just a guideline we don't really need to follow anyway. That's again what creates this whole divide here, the gridlock.
Well, that same thing will happen, because when the suggestion was that we determine how we appoint. And that could cause gridlock.
Right. So if you just follow that without this protocol, you have gridlock. If you just follow the state policy and don't have this thing, you still have the potential for a gridlock. The only way to get rid of the gridlock is to come up with a policy such as a vacancy timeline and make it an ordinance. Because this thing actually starts removing questions about things, and it's transparent. It says, you know, if someone resigns within the first 90 days, it's going to special election. There's no question about it.
I'm telling you, the cleanest way to do this is straight up special election.
And that's, you know,
Eliminate all the other stuff.
but it needs to be an ordinance. It can't just come down to, again, arguing whether to follow the protocol or not.
Because then we're going to be here talking about who we should appoint for 5 meetings. I mean, how long can that go on for?
Yeah.
You know, we have to give them a notice. It's like the special election is, one, you get nominated. You're serious. You go out and you hit the streets. There may be nobody that does that. So then really it should be the other way. The default is if nobody gets nominated, nobody's going to run for the election, then it goes back to some kind of appointment process, however that works out. But really the initial should be special election.
The special election, remember, will have a time period, a time period of greater than 114 days without a full-blown council. That's over 3 months, going to 3.5 months.
You get 50 applications in
That's
here.
seven council meetings that we may not be able to conduct the city business.
So just having experienced both of the vacancy, one, you didn't have a protocol, and there was essentially
Same thing.
the 4 members chose how to do it. I mean, essentially, the second time you had a protocol, and those 4 members still decide. So I think what Councilmember DeSant's saying is if you don't put it in there, then there's not an argument, well, that's the protocol. So it becomes the seating council makes the decision of what you're going to do. And that, maybe you don't want to put a protocol in that ties those future hands somewhat. Doesn't tie because it's a protocol, but if you just remove that, then you follow the government code that says you'll either do an appointment, and it's 60 days, not 90. I was wrong. Dave was right on that. Or you're gonna go to a special election if you can't find a satisfactory solution from those four seating council members.
Yeah, I think we should do that because
I agree with that, but it's still the same situation.
that's what he was saying. He was just saying, as I was saying, let's put it in stone that's what we're going to do.
You either follow the state policy to the T and you just deal with the gridlock if it happens, or you're going to have to come up with some better guideline like this vacancy timeline, but it then has to become an ordinance. Otherwise, you still, you know.
We're going to have a situation like that no matter what we do. The protocol we had short-circuited that, but it didn't work. So
Well, but if we made it this, for example, this vacancy timeline solution, if we made that an ordinance, then you're saying we would still have the potential for a gridlock if.
Of course.
Because you'd still be deciding.
Yeah, well, you may have that where only one person wants to do it, and the other council members say, "Well, we should do a special election because that's what our code says,
But
right?"
then you're also,
So you give that option away.
You'd be avoiding a lot of uncertainty in the public, wondering if we were doing the right thing, because we would be doing the right thing. It may take a little while, but there would not be any last-minute changes or council members who decide they don't want to do it a certain way, because it would be an ordinance and we would have to do it that way and settle it that way.
Okay, so that's what I was saying. Is it needs to be. If there is a policy that we do make, it needs to become an ordinance.
I'm going to make a motion. The motion is that we dissolve the protocol that we have in place and that we go to the state law, which requires appointment and a special election, and the appointment process will be determined at the time of the vacancy.
No, we need more solid than that.
No,
If we're going to do an appointment, it has to be.
no,
either
well, no,
application-
you can second the
Not
motion
solid.
or we can discuss it.
So this would just be dissolve the protocol entirely,
Yeah.
and
And then decide how we appoint when the next vacancy occurs.
just go through what most other cities do.
Yeah. And what we did before, what we did anyway.
Mm-hmm.
How do we know what other cities do?
I can give you my experience in the situation, and I've represented a few cities over the time. It's, I would say, fairly
all over the map. I've seen a vacancy filled in one city by the draw of a card among candidates. I've seen it by application. I've seen it from the Planning Commission elevation. They'll bring up someone from the Planning Commission. I've seen, well, as Solvang has done, the next runner-up in the election. I've seen that a couple times, actually.
I think the question she had was how many cities actually have a protocol that's in place besides just dealing with the way the state.
That I don't know without actually going into the code. And there may be resolutions out there that other cities have adopted that are not really publicly available until such time as the issue comes up. I'm just telling you what I've experienced with vacancies in the past.
I know that when I went to League of California Cities during this whole time, I did ask several people I came into contact with about this, and no one was aware of anything besides just following the state code, which is, I think Buellton just went through 3 council members in like what, 3 months, and they just followed it right that way. No big problem.
Well, Neil actually about a month ago did come up with something interesting, which was to, if you were doing the application process, to pull from candidates who were currently on city boards. So they would be vetted candidates who have already been involved with the city. I didn't think that that was necessarily a negative thing, but I don't. It didn't go over. It didn't go over really well at that time. But I don't know if it was explored. So
There's a motion on the floor awaiting a second. Is there a second to that motion?
Can you repeat the motion?
Yeah.
The motion is that we delete the current protocol and go with the state law that says we will do I'm forgetting the words now. Appointment, right, appointment or special election, and the appointment process will be determined at the time of the vacancy.
If we use the appointment process.
Well, we have to use one or the other, and that, if we decide to go to the election, we can. If we decide to go to the appointment process, we can determine how we're going to appoint at that time.
So just follow state law and deal with it at the time.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll second that.
We're just going to get rid of what's in here now.
Right.
We're going to delete it. Okay.
Delete the current protocol.
Okay. Put that in your motion then.
I did.
Yeah, I don't think you need to add to follow state law, because you're required to follow
Just
state law.
delete the protocol.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Call the roll, please.
Mayor Richardson?
Yes.
Councilmember Waite?
Yes.
Jamison?
Yes.
Toussaint?
Yes.
Zimmerman?
No.
That passed with a 4-1 vote. Thank you all. On to item number 8.
Item 8.
Okay, can we just go back to
Yes.
discuss protocols? I would like us all to make sure that we've read all the protocols, sign off on all the protocols, accept the protocols as they are. If we disagree with them, then we need to bring them to this council and make any changes we need to have. I don't want us to do what we did this last go-around, saying, well, I didn't know that was there.
Actually, that's a good point, because there were a few things in here. That's why at the last meeting I also asked that if this council protocol thing, okay, we can decide on that, but does it still leave the rest of the council protocols open for discussion? So I was mainly just focusing on the current one at hand that we wanted to resolve. But I would like to leave this on the agenda. Table the rest for like we got this one taken out, but now we can let's
Okay, so we
put the red marker to the rest.
Okay, and my concern is, I brought up last time, I think we need a protocol as to how we issue grant funds.
Oh, and I think that's a really important one too.
I think we need to do that now for this year, so that the people that are applying for grants will understand why they may not be getting grants.
Okay.
And I think we need to rework the application's pretty thorough. Application's thorough.
Well, we want to specify who will accept grants from.
Well, we need staff maybe to bring us some choices as to how we could I know that Sandra had some concerns about it.
Right.
I would like to hear her concerns.
Do we want-
Yeah, I think we actually had council policies. I don't know if we had it. I can't find my future calendar right now, but we do have that out in the future.
How far out in the future?
I think it was
We
actually
already got nods on that
the
one.
first one in December, and that is, grant is one of the council policies, I think, the grant process. But we can definitely bring that to the.
Even if we don't have it, I would like us to
Yeah,
create
and obviously
one.
you want to get it in place and
Right.
ready before
Yeah,
the next
council
funding cycle,
policies
which we do about
review
March.
is in December.
We should
11th.
prioritize that one.
Yeah, but the grant one is,
Yeah, I think,
we
yeah,
need
so
that
I did
now.
have it at
December
December
11th,
11th, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Now can we go to item 8?
I move that we cancel the,
Council, the staff report. Or would you read that,
Go
please?
ahead.
Item 8, cancellation of the second city council meeting in
Staff report?
Yes or no?
Is there any questions of staff report?
no,
Bring it to the council to public for comment. Is there any public comment on this item? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to council for action.
I move the cancellation of the second meeting in November.
Is there a second?
I wanted to talk about grants that day, but I'll roll with that. So I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Pass 5-0. Oh, wait, I gotta get back to, trying to get back to the agenda.
I don't think there's cancellation tonight.
Okay, council member reports. Are there any council member reports?
I would just like to add to what Shirley Stacy said about the library.
Okay.
It was very obvious to me that and maybe I've said this in the last meeting, I can't remember. It was very obvious to me when we sat down with I was at the county advisory committee meeting. It was very obvious to me that the consultants did not understand the whole picture of libraries in Santa Barbara County, and especially in Zone 1, and how the lack of transparency was really concerning to the smaller libraries. And with the fact that Goleta Library is now probably pulling out and will be on their own and will be in their own so-called zone, that will mean that all of the smaller libraries, Carpinteria, Montecito, us, Buellton, and that's it, I think, are going to be probably having an additional administration fee. It's going to be raised, and that is of concern to me. And I really resent being told top-down how that's going to be handled. So I hope that there will be discussion tomorrow or Wednesday with the Friends of the Library so that the consultants understand how serious the problem is with the lack of transparency in the library funding system. And there were some very heated discussions at the meeting that Shirley did not bring up. She was very gracious about how she reported the meeting, but it's become very volatile. There are some angry people out there, and they resent the fact of how Santa Barbara Central is treating the smaller libraries. They have all the power, and they are not coming to us to discuss anything. They are telling us top-down what to do. And we are going to see, what's interesting is that Jessica came back to, I shouldn't say that, the librarian from Santa Barbara Central came back to Shirley and asked her, what budget are you working on? She didn't even know which budget she had given us to work with. And that is not good. So, stay tuned.
On the waste management meeting we had, would you like to discuss that?
Waste management. Oh,
That's what
you know, why don't you do that? Because my memory right now is not the greatest.
On the subcommittee, or the ad hoc committee for waste collection, met with waste management folks, and we had a long discussion, and they're going to come back to us with options or additional benefits that we might receive by renewing and extending the contract without going out to bid. And they're in the process of getting back with us. They were supposed to get back with us today, didn't make it. So I guess the next meeting we'll report on what they come up with.
And I believe some of the additional options they're evaluating was relocating or locating additional waste drop-off locations so we won't have as many people using Solvang as the dumping ground for trash.
Community recycle.
Recycle, yeah.
Additional community recycle.
Sorry, the community recycle.
Okay, we're talking about waste management.
Yes.
Okay, so I know that there are people that are serviced by other collection agencies that come and dump their stuff in Solvang.
So we were asking them to locate some additional spots out of Solvang so that,
But they aren't in that area.
do you know what areas they're in?
They're in Buellton.
So I think we're,
Well, Solvang residents can dump in Buellton. Is that-
No, but they're not supposed to come and dump their recyclables
Oh, you mean Buellton
here.
people coming over?
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's something that you can't hardly police, you know. That's what they understand that through our trash collection at Nielsen's and over here. The people from the county come in and dump in there, even though they don't have trash collection services. And that was,
Unincorporated area has waste management.
yeah, they do,
But it's not
But-
mandatory.
but they don't
service.
have
But
to
what-
subscribe.
Pardon me?
You don't have to subscribe to trash
No,
collection.
no.
if we're negotiating additional places for people to dump their recycling on the outskirts of Solvang in order to try to keep them from coming into Solvang and dumping it, and there's that waste management location right there in Buellton, then couldn't we just ask them to absorb the cost for allowing people in Buellton to put their recycling there?
You could.
Yeah.
I mean, that
'Cause
would.
Otherwise, the people from Buellton are driving over to our free spot in Solvang.
I'm sure Marburg would love if you allowed the Buellton residents to dump in at that site.
So that's the meeting we had.
We're
still
looking to try to
waiting.
reduce traffic coming into Solvang and people bringing their waste into.
Well, can they set up things in the unincorporated area?
That's what Ryan's talking about.
Yeah.
They're gonna try to put something
So we're
in
pushing for in the unincorporated areas
Okay.
because they also have that. But now I'm just realizing they do have their location in Buellton. So if people are already bringing it to Solvang to have waste management take it anyway, then waste management should just accept it in
Well,
Buellton.
sometimes they ask you for your identification
Right.
and where you live.
They do that.
But we don't have a way. So that Buellton location, because it's staffed, has the ability to keep Solvang. Keep people from doing that, and they can ask you to see your driver's license,
Right,
whole nine
right,
yards.
Right.
But at all of our drop-off locations
Nielsen's
here,
and
they're
over here.
unstaffed.
Yeah,
So
okay.
everyone's learned in the valley that
Got it.
the free meal tickets in Solvang.
Okay.
Now, we got, next item would be the stormwater management thing. We got all that information. Have you had it? I looked at it, but I was bewildered. Did you have any suggestions, any ideas?
I haven't had time to work further on that
Okay.
at this point.
So we're still on that item.
But I did just recently request some stuff from Brad. I just haven't gotten that far.
It came. I think it was a stack like so. I think he's trying to dissuade us. Is there any other committee reports?
I got my first magazine for League of American Cities, so I was really excited.
Oh, the Western? Good. There's some good stuff in it sometimes. Okay, well, if there's no other business, then we'll stand adjourned.